Hey everybody, Madeline here to talk about Saturn stationing direct. When Saturn goes direct, karmic cycles are going to break and we're going to start seeing new beginnings. Saturn is the great karmic teacher, and when it goes retrograde, it pulls each one of us inward and forces us to look at our shadows and confront ourselves basically and reflect on our patterns and take responsibility for our part in things, hopefully, and basically mature, grow up. And Saturn in Pisces is emotional waters. And when Saturn is in retrograde in Pisces, it churns up the emotional waters and brings up old emotional, painful memories and feelings can show up that are uncomfortable. And it can trigger us to escape these feelings and basically cause us to sort of feel an emptiness, a spiritual emptiness, which then causes us to repeat karmic cycles. So when Saturn is in retrograde, we meet that point again where we usually make a karmic choice. But our souls are growing in this period. It is a spiritual transit. It is about an inward evolution where we confront that part of us, that emptiness, that part where we seek something on the external to heal something on the internal. And we know it doesn't work now. So we're really facing that and making big strides and resisting the old ways, going back to something that isn't good for us. Painful memories can show up and it can bring feelings of guilt and shame. And we're really sort of going through a process where we're realizing where we were wrong. And this isn't for punishment, it's to expose our karmic patterns so that we can cleanse our karmic waters. Pisces is the end of the astrological sign. So when it is in Pisces, when Saturn moves into Pisces, it is ending a 29-year cycle. As soon as we clear these lessons, when Saturn is at the end degrees of the cycle, of the karmic cycle, in retrograde, we become so aware of our patterns that we suddenly clear them. We end that's how we end a karmic cycle because we've become aware of it. And in that awareness, we make choices. We're making different choices. We're changing who we are on the inside. We've ended a pattern. We're ending a big pattern, shall we say, that is a destructive pattern, that is a self-destructive pattern. So all of a sudden, you're going to see sudden things dissolve and end out of our lives, like a living situation, karmic relationship could just suddenly end. Um, a parent could pass away because, we're all here with karmic cycles and journeys with our parents. So a parent could pass. We could suddenly, shall we say, a karmic job suddenly ends and we're seeing a new beginning. Again, these cycles are ending, create a vacuum, which sucks in a new beginning. That's how the universe works. As soon as there's a vacuum, it's filled. So we're going to see the new beginnings as the old lives dissolve before our very eyes. Old living situations, jobs, relationships, partnerships, somewhere, wherever Capricorn rules your chart. I'm going to go through all the 12 signs. So, as our awareness grows during this retrograde period, by the time the planet stations direct, we've learned some major lessons because during the period that Saturn was in retrograde in July until now, we may have felt a lot of stagnation. Saturn would have shut and blocked a lot of things so that we really aren't so busy that we're not reflecting, right? And so we may have not had clarity until now. The clarity is building now as Saturn stationing direct, but there would have been a period of feeling of stagnancy and blocks and emotional heaviness. And like I say, karmic cycles definitely may have returned for a lot of people because we have to sometimes see in the retrograde period, we're reflecting as we're sometimes repeating the karmic cycle. Maybe that brings clarity to the reflection period, as it were. So a lot of job pressures could have been happening for a lot of people, a lot of confusion about our shall we say, path, our direction, spiritual numbness, heaviness, depression, but this is also that we confront our unresolved karma and face truths we haven't wanted to see. Old relationship boundaries are tested. The big chance, as like I say, that spiritual emptiness shows up. It could spark relapses, like I say, going back to things that aren't right for us, that are self-destructive. And we're basically facing and gaining clarity of the root cause of our karmic cycles and the emptiness that causes us to make the choices that we make that cause another karmic cycle, which we don't want to do right now. So Saturn direct brings us karmic clarity and the fog lifts. And we're basically back on our destiny, and the destiny resumes its flow. And we start to see the beginnings of a new stability. You can feel it in the energy. So Pisces is the energy of emotions, right? And like I said, when Saturn was in retrograde in Pisces, it churned up those emotions. Well, now that's all going to stabilize. Things are going to feel calm. And Saturn stationing direct is going to bring us a lot of discipline and maturity. And we're going to be able to make very big decisions, long-term decisions. We have a clarity about that. We know what we want now. We know what our new cycle is because we've cleared a karmic base choice point. I hope that's clear. We're making choices that are in alignment with our destiny, with a karmic justice. Um, yes, we're aligning with divine order. When we created our karma, we were making choices that were not in alignment with divine order. Karmic Saturn retrograde, we become aware of how we were making choices out of not in divine order, out of alignment with divine order. So as the planet Saturn stations direct, the energy, like I say, of karmic alignment starts to move forward. There's a momentum building. Things are starting to feel stable. And as this is happening, the universe acknowledges the inner growth, the hard work that we did, and says, you are now ready for the next step. Woohoo! So Saturn stationing direct is going to bring us all a lot of momentum forward in an area where we've done a lot of karmic clearing. And I'm going to go through all the 12 signs and talk about that for each of the sign. All right. See you there. All right, Leo, Saturn is stationing direct in your eighth house, which means it has been transiting your eighth house for almost 3 years, and it went retrograde in July. So from July until now, you will have been experiencing some of your deeper shadow fears around financing and financial long-term security. Now, Saturn transiting through your eighth house in the last 3 years or so, or a little bit less, would have had you really come to some core, deep, wounding fears of stability and financial security. There is a certain feeling of a pending disaster when Saturn's transiting your eighth house. Your finances do not necessarily feel stable. And when it goes into retrograde, it's even worse because you're really confronting your deep-rooted fears about the lack of faith you have in a God, basically. You come face to face with your lack of trust in God. There's this sort of feeling that you could lose everything. And oftentimes when planets transit the eighth house, we can lose things. We do lose financial possessions or our money or let's see what else. Stock values, things like that. But what it's doing is it's releasing our fear-based grippage on our finances so that we loosen up the energy field. That's what the eighth house is all about, sort of clearing blocked, stagnant, undercurrent energies that are sort of decaying. And so Saturn, that karma there for Leo is clearing some sort of deep fear base lack of belief in your survival, that your survival is assured and that you have a God, that there's a God protecting you. And that puts you into karmic cycles of bad or not bad, but it's not about shame or guilt. It's about learning the lesson that that causes you that fear, that lack of trust, that emptiness, that dread, that feeling of that you're not going to make it causes you to make karmic cycles and get in debt or financial partnerships and agreements that are not necessarily aligned in divine order with your life or your dharma or the highest good for you and everyone. So in retrograde, you came into contact with this sort of impending doom, disaster feeling of fears of not making it, basically. And now that's going to change. So when Saturn stations direct, you're going to see forward momentum. Now, also with Saturn in retrograde, you could have joined resources with partners and your other half. And it may have felt very unstable in that situation. But now Saturn stationing direct can stabilize your finances in a joint relationship. Joining your resources now creates stability. Or a loan comes in or a stocks. I think stocks are going to improve here potentially. So some sort of financial windfall can absolutely happen with this grand water trine for you in the eighth house. And the grand water trine happens in your moksha houses. So these are transformative transits for you, this water trine, where you are transforming from fear to faith and trust in the universe and in yourself, really. You're clearing a karmic pattern there with Jupiter in your 12th house of like, well, the water trine, Saturn trines your 12th house, and the 12th house is often considered a karmic house. And so this is a trauma-based fear that's transforming here, a deep trauma, bone-rattling fears coming up here in that retrograde period, but you are going to make it. I had Saturn retrograde in my eighth house, and I was bone rattled. I had an investment. I had overinvested in something, and I was afraid I couldn't make the payments in a piece of property. I managed, it all worked out, but it wasn't easy, and certainly didn't trust God, but I became much more. What happened out of that transit is I saw that my dharma, because then Saturn goes into your ninth house, where you can really see the alignment that Saturn in your eighth was asking you to take a risk to step and get ready to walk your dharmic path. And now by the time Saturn, so that's shaky, that's scary, right? Because you're not, it's not the path that looks stable, but it is because it is your dharmic path. And that's what transforms in this transit for you is that you discover when Saturn moves into your ninth house that your dharmic path needed you to initiate, you know, our success is not good success, long-lasting success is not overnight. So you can't see the progress you're making, the growth that you're making. And when Saturn moves into your ninth house, you have really grounded you really are on a stable trajectory on your dharmic path, providing you with financial long-term security. It starts to show its shape. So Saturn direct is going to stabilize your finances and perhaps also healing through intimacy in your relationships in general will feel better. Now, Capricorn rules your sixth house, so you're going to see your health stabilize. Stress was probably another karmic cycle for you, Leo, is that you stress because Capricorn over your sixth house is going to cause you to have patterns of stress related to your finances there. And you're going to let go of that now. You're going to feel stable and comfortable and confident and secure financially. This is going to be great for you, Leo. You know, this Saturn stationing direct in your eighth house is going to end psychological uncertainty. Um, you know, you're going to be relieved from these hidden fears and you're being transformed into power. This looks really good for you. Now, I did forget to mention the water trine blesses your fourth house. So you could move or find out good information about a property or real estate or you are able to afford more rent. You're able to move here because of some sort of perhaps financial gain that occurs here, a windfall. The losses would have happened during the retrograde. In direct, you win, especially since it makes a trine to Jupiter. And then you've got this Mercury in your fourth house. So communication with your family opens up, you know, and harmony is healed and restored to sort of spiritually liberating, you know, there's been spiritual growth. This is soul growth going on in here for sure. So we're ready for the next step when Saturn moves into your ninth, where you're really going to be, I say really a lot, I apologize, where you're going to be leading the way in your dharmic path. And I'm also going to go into, I don't want to do all the 12 signs for each month anymore because I feel like I try to put too much information and it rushes me. So I think I'm just going to do major transits for all the 12 signs and do multiples of those in the month. So I will be doing a video next about all the planets that are moving into Sagittarius, which will be in your fifth house, which will be awesome. All right, stay tuned for that. If you would like a personal reading, feel free to contact me at soullevels.com. I have a booking link there. And or you can email me at madeleineparker111@gmail.com and be put on my email list. All right, have a wonderful night. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. Namaste.